first nights of a new year are strange. The calendar resets, people make promises, fireworks fade, and for a brief moment it feels like anything could happen. But for some people, the year didn't begin with hope or celebration. It began with something else entirely, something they would never forget. These are three true stories that happened at the very beginning of a year. No legends, no internet creepypasta, just real people who stepped into a new chapter of their lives and realized far too late that something had followed them in. The first story begins just after midnight. A man in his early 30s had just moved into a new apartment on New Year's Eve. It wasn't ideal, but it was all he could afford after a rough breakup and a job change. The building was old, narrow, and quiet in a way that felt unnatural for a city that never really slept. He unpacked until almost midnight, then stepped outside to watch distant fireworks from the fire escape. When the clock struck 12, there were cheers echoing somewhere far away. He smiled to himself and whispered that this year would be different. At 12:07 a.m., someone knocked on his door. He assumed it was a neighbor introducing themselves or complaining about noise, even though he hadn't made any. When he opened the door, no one was there. The hallway lights flickered once, then stabilized. He shrugged it off. At 12:19 a.m., the knock came again, this time louder. 3 firm knocks. He opened the door faster, annoyed now. Still no one. At 12:33 a.m., the knocking returned. This time, it came from inside the apartment, specifically from his bedroom closet. He froze, listening. The sound came again. 3 slow knocks, pressing from the inside of the closet door. He stood perfectly still, heart racing, telling himself it had to be pipes or old wood or stress. Then he heard breathing. Not loud, not dramatic, just close enough to know it wasn't his. He grabbed his phone, ran out of the apartment barefoot, and spent the rest of the night sitting on the stairwell calling friends who didn't answer. The police found nothing. The closet was empty. But when he moved out 2 weeks later, the landlord asked him one question that still haunts him. Did you hear it too? The second story begins on New Year's Day, somewhere much quieter. A family of 4 had rented a small countryside cabin to start the year right. No phones, no work, just snow, silence, and time together. The cabin had been owned by the same family for decades and came with a handwritten guest book filled with notes from previous visitors. On the first night, the mother flipped through it by candlelight, smiling at old entries. Then she noticed something strange. Multiple entries mentioned dreams. Not just bad dreams. The same dream. A figure standing outside the cabin, watching through the windows, never moving, never knocking. She laughed it off and closed the book. That night, her youngest son woke up screaming. He said someone had been standing outside his window. The father checked. Snow untouched. No footprints. No signs of anyone around for miles. The next night, the daughter had the dream. The same figure, same place, same stillness. By the third night, the mother dreamed it too. She woke up just before dawn, heart pounding, convinced someone was outside. She pulled the curtain back and screamed. There were footprints in the snow. They led from the tree line to the window and stopped there. No footprints leading away. The family left before sunrise, abandoning their bags, their food, and the guest book. Later, the owner told them something quietly over the phone. You weren't supposed to read past the first few pages. The third story didn't happen in one night. It unfolded slowly over the first month of the year. A woman decided to start 2026 by tracking her sleep using a smartwatch. She lived alone, worked remotely, and liked data. It felt like a harmless resolution. The first week looked normal. Then she noticed something strange. Every night between 3:12 and 3:17 a.m., her watch recorded movement. Not walking, not restlessness, consistent pacing. She assumed she was sleepwalking. She set up her phone to record. On the third night, the video showed her sitting up in bed, eyes open, staring directly at the camera for nearly 5 minutes without moving. Then, she smiled. The next morning, she found a note on her kitchen table written in her handwriting. "You're getting better at this." She stopped wearing the watch. The notes continued. Short messages, dates, times, things she didn't remember doing. She woke up one morning to find muddy footprints in her hallway. They didn't match her shoes. She moved out before February. Month later, she requested her sleep data out of curiosity. The pacing hadn't been coming from her bedroom. It had been recorded from the living room, every night, at the same time. As the year moved on, all three people tried to rationalize what they experienced. Stress, coincidence, fear magnifying memory. But none of them were ever quite the same, because something about starting a new year does something to people. It makes us open. It makes us hopeful. And sometimes it makes us vulnerable. So if you're watching this early in the year and in the quiet after celebration, listening to the sounds in your home and wondering if they've always been there, just remember, not everything that enters a new year is invited, and not every present leaves when the clock strikes midnight.